Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Savannah Chrisley marks first anniversary of ex-Nick Kerdiles' death. Still don't want to believe it. On Monday, September 23, Chrisley, 27, wrote on her Instagram stories, "I can't believe it's been a year, still don't want to believe it," as she reposted the video she initially shared after Kerdiles' death. She also posted a photo of white roses on the side of a road, likely around the spot where Kerdiles' accident took place, and wrote over it, "Thank you for all the signs you send me," along with a Bible verse. In her post last year following the news of Kerdiles' death, Chrisley wrote, "It is impossible to believe that you are really gone. I am not sure how to even absorb that news. I don't know how to react. I am so sad and so numb. I don't want to believe it." The Chrisley Knows Best alum reflected on their relationship too, as she wrote, "I had just turned 20 when we met, you were only 23, we were just kids learning about life and love, and trying to make it all work. We just want to figure out things on our terms. I mean, Nick's 26 and I'm 23, so we kind of joke, we've got the rest of our lives to figure it out," she said at the time. On the September 24 episode of her Unlocked podcast, Chrisley admitted she'd been dreading the anniversary as she held back tears. "It's so hard. There have been times where I've felt him so present, and it's hard to believe that he's actually gone," she said. "We may have been broken up, but I never stopped loving you. Part of me always thought that maybe we would have found our way back. But who knows," she wrote in the caption. "I so badly wish we were celebrating 30. I wish I could have seen you be one hell of a dad. You always wanted that. This one hurts. What I wouldn't do for that smile and an I love you kid. Right about now." It had been a year since the tragedy, but for Savannah Chrisley, the pain still lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. Standing on the balcony of her Nashville home, she gazed out at the sprawling city, her heart heavy with emotions she hadn't quite learned to name. The skyline looked the same, the lights twinkling in the cool October air, but everything felt different. Nothing had been the same since that day. The day Nick was taken from this world far too soon. Nick Kerdiles, just saying his name in her mind made her heart twist. A former professional hockey player, a man who once glided effortlessly across the ice and through her life, now only a memory. He had been her first love, her rock, and for a time, her future. But fate had other plans, snatching him away in a way that still didn't feel real. It didn't seem possible that a whole year had passed. Savannah still remembered the phone call like it had happened only yesterday. She was sitting at her kitchen table, scrolling mindlessly through her phone when the news came. At first, she didn't understand. It felt like a bad dream, one she would wake up from, but the nightmare never ended. Nick was gone. The days that followed were a blur of tears, shock, and disbelief. People told her it would get easier, that time heals all wounds. But what they didn't tell her was how time also preserved certain kinds of pain, locking them away in the corners of your heart where they stayed, untouched by the passage of months. Grief, she learned, wasn't a straight line. It wasn't something you moved through and came out the other side of. It was something you carried with you, a constant companion. As the first anniversary of his death approached, Savannah found herself thinking of him more than usual. She scrolled through old photos, her fingers lingering on the ones where he smiled the brightest. Those were the moments when Nick had been the most alive, laughing at her terrible jokes, holding her close during sunsets, or simply sitting in silence, enjoying each other's company, the weight of what could have been pressed down on her chest like an anchor. Savannah decided to visit his favorite spot. It was a quiet park, nestled on the outskirts of town, far from the hustle and bustle of their usual lives. They used to go there often, sitting by the lake, feeding the ducks, and talking about their future. It was there that they had dreamed about the life they might build together, the home they would create, and maybe even the children they would raise. Now, all those dreams were ghosts that danced in the space between what was and what could never be. Dressed in a simple black sweater and jeans, Savannah walked slowly along the park's winding path, her eyes tracing the familiar curves of the landscape. The trees were changing, their leaves burning in hues of orange and gold, a stark contrast to the grayness she felt inside. She stopped at the edge of the lake, where the water lapped softly against the shore. It was quiet, peaceful, but there was no peace to be found in her heart. She pulled out a small journal from her bag, the one she had started writing in after Nick passed. It was filled with letters to him, thoughts she wished she could share, words she would never be able to say to his face. Opening to a fresh page, Savannah let out a deep breath and began to write. Nick, it's been a year, and I still don't want to believe it. I keep waiting for you to walk through the door, to flash that smile that always made everything seem okay. I've tried to move forward, tried to be strong like you would want me to be, but some days it feels impossible. You were such a huge part of my life of me, and now that you're gone, there's a piece of me missing too. Her handwriting wavered as her emotions bubbled to the surface. She wiped away a stray tear before continuing. I still talk to you, you know, late at night when I can't sleep. I tell you about my day, the little things that make me laugh, the things that make me cry. I wonder if you can hear me, if you're out there somewhere watching over me. I hope you are. I hope you know how much I miss you. Savannah paused, staring down at the words she had written. It felt both cathartic and unbearably painful. How could it already be a year? How could it have only been a year? Time was a cruel trickster, twisting her reality in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. She closed the journal softly and sat down on the grass, pulling her knees up to her chest. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and for a brief moment, she felt Nick's presence beside her, like he was still there, watching over her, as if nothing had changed. But when she turned, there was only the empty bench where they used to sit together. I miss you, she whispered into the wind, her voice barely audible, swallowed up by the vastness of the world around her. The park began to darken as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. Savannah stood up, clutching her journal close to her chest. She knew she had to keep moving, to keep living her life, even if it felt impossible some days. Nick would have wanted that. He would have wanted her to be happy. But today, just for a little while longer, she allowed herself to sit with the grief, to honor the love they had shared, and to remember the man who had changed her life forever. As she walked back to her car, Savannah looked up at the sky, the first stars just beginning to twinkle against the deepening twilight. I'll see you again someday, she murmured softly, but until then, I'll keep you in my heart. With that, she drove away from the park, the memory of Nick still fresh in her mind, the weight of the anniversary heavy but somehow more bearable. And as the city lights came into view once more, she felt a small sense of peace knowing that even in death, he was still with her. Always. It was a crisp, quiet morning when Savannah Chrisley found herself standing in front of the mirror, staring at a reflection that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. A year had passed since that fateful day, the day that had stolen her ex-fiancé, Nick Kerdiles, from the world and from her. The echoes of grief were still present, as raw and vivid as they had been in those first shattering moments when she learned he was gone. The pain hadn't dulled, if anything, it had taken on a new shape. It was no longer the sharp, unbearable agony that crushed her chest, but rather a constant hum in the background of her life, ever present and inescapable. There were times when she could distract herself, throwing herself into work, friends, and family. But today, on this anniversary, there was no escape. Today, she allowed herself to feel everything.